voor u, dan zullen we beginnen. Ik denk dat de meeste mensen in de call zitten. Ik denk dat we ook niet te veel mogen uitlopen.
Ja, dat is goed. Ik had nog één berichtje gestuurd. Christophe, kan je eventjes gewoon checken? Gewoon zien dat we dat afgevinkt hebben.
Nee, we zullen geen recording doen. Uiteindelijk, je hebt dus het grootste stuk wel eigenlijk opgenomen, hè?
Ik heb het niet voorhand opgenomen. Ik ga het live doen. Ik ga het toch live doen.
Ah, ga je het toch live doen?
Ik ga het toch live doen, ja.
Ja, oké. Ja, maar het is goed. Het is goed. Ja, in het Engels. So we proceed in English. Okay, thank you everybody for joining this webinar. Just to be sure, for those who don't know me, I'm Christophe from Tech Data Belgium. For the people of the Netherlands, Geraldine van Dillewijn, you probably know, is also in the call. If there's any questions about Apple or about DPP, you can contact her. And of course, we have Bart, our main speaker from Adobe. So just before we go on with Adobe, just to have a quick update about the DPP program we have. So there's a new incentive on TD Renew. For those who don't know this is only for the Belgian part, not for the Netherlands. So there's a new incentive coming out with 150 euros on the renewal bannering. There's a mail was sent last week, and I think the month before also. We also have the newsletter incentive. So what is this? If you use the bannering and you use our portal, you can have like a 150 euros incentive. Also for the newsletter, when you have approved and send this out, you also have a 150 euro of incentive that we credit at the end of the month. There's a new portal being made for those who don't have a really good website, or for those who want to implement the portal. So you can implement the calculator of the renewal or for example, our tech as a service or leasing subscription. So you can explain to the customer how much it is for the new iPhone to pay it per month, for example, for 3 years or 2 years or otherwise. So as you know, we're searching for DPP verticals. So just to search new ways to develop all the sales. So we're always open for suggestion. We had this week, for example, Jamf, and now we have Adobe for the creative part. At Tech Data, and I think also Apple believes that almost 30% of the CPU users, so with CPU I mean laptop and desktop users, require a Mac because of their creative sides. So because Apple and Adobe go hand in hand, we wanted to talk to you about the newest M1 chip for this. And this is why I'm grateful that Bart is joining and giving this webinar for us. So I'm giving the word to you, Bart, for explaining and give more insight on this.
Cool. Thank you, Christophe. I'm just going to go ahead and just quickly share my screen. Just double checking if. There we go. Christophe, can you confirm? Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Excellent. Fine. Excellent. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. So my name is Bart van der Wielen, Principal Solution Consultant for Adobe. And for the next, I would say 15 minutes or so, we're going to try and finish this off around 11. I'm going to talk about Adobe Creative Cloud on Mac specifically. I'm going to talk about mobility. I'm going to talk about artificial intelligence. And this session is being recorded, as you know, so if you want to watch this, revisit this session again, if you have to leave, unfortunately, that's absolutely fine. You can have this recording when this is over. Of course, I'll have to share the slides and any other type of information I'm referencing here today. Now, let's take a quick look at the agenda. I am going to start out with like a handful of slides, let's say 5 or 6 different slides, but that's basically it because I want everything else to be hands-on on the actual devices because that's where you get the value out of this webinar, of course. So I'm going to start out by just quickly talking about the mobile workforce that Adobe has in offering right now. So this is mobile applications, and I'm going to focus on Photoshop for the iPad specifically, and also Lightroom mobile for the iPad. Now, the reason I picked Photoshop and Lightroom is because, first of all, they go hand in hand, which is always real, which is always neat. And secondly, this is an application, especially Photoshop for the iPad, that really excels if you use this on the iPad Pro. So I'm using an iPad Pro here today. I do use Apple products personally. So I have an iPhone, which I use to take pictures, and then I edit those pictures using Lightroom. And I have an iPad Pro, which I primarily use for the more heavy-duty stuff. It's a larger screen. It has a lot better processing speed. And of course, I can connect all sorts of crazy peripherals because it's a USB-C port. And so this means that for me as a presenter, this is actually a very good device because I can both work on it and I can also present with that device. Secondly, we're going to take a look at some of the AI-powered features, so artificial intelligence. There are a couple of things that you can do today that you could not do 2 years ago. Using, for example, Photoshop and Premiere Pro. And these AI-powered features, of course, they're powered by an algorithm. Algorithms take processing speed, and that is something that I do want to emphasize here, and that is the speed gain that you do get with the recent updates of the Creative Cloud software, because we natively support the new Apple M1 chip. Speaking of which, let's take a quick look at a couple of the benchmarks that we have. So just know that Adobe went through excessive testing of the Apple M1 chip to make sure that the software is compatible with the solutions that we have to offer here today. But of course, there's a difference between just being compatible and actually having an advantage using this Apple M1 configuration. And just kind of show you what we have. So if you combine Photoshop or Premiere Pro or anything that is basically memory heavy, that needs like very heavy duty hardware, we do see a significant speed increase if you are using the Apple M1 chip. And so, for example, right now, I'm actually using 2 MacBooks at the same time. I'm using a 3-year-old MacBook Pro, which is on the left-hand side here, which you cannot see right now, which has a whole bunch of RAM. I believe it has 32 gigs of RAM, and it's an Intel Core i9. And this machine, on which I'm presenting right now, has an M1 chip, and it only has 8 gigabytes, so 32 versus 8. And I have to say, just playing around with this for a short while here, I can already see that some of the requirements that I have for the Creative Cloud software specifically, the waiting time I have in processing large files is equal or better on the M1 8 gigabyte RAM machine here than on my i9 32 gigabyte RAM machine that I have here on the left-hand side. And so looking at actual comparisons, so on average, if we compare the whole Creative Cloud suite, which is now something that everybody uses every single app of all the time, we almost double the processing speed that you can achieve if you are using the Apple M1 chip. So this is something that we tested. There is a very long report from this. It's like a 16-page report. I'm happy to share it with you guys as well after this session if you want to dive deeper into this. Just a couple of highlights. For example, if you want to use this on Photoshop, so again, if you're familiar with these applications, then these functionalities that you see here are going to look pretty familiar. So for example, if you're using something like content-aware fill, again, which is an AI-driven algorithm, you have a 200% speed increase, which is pretty amazing. Same thing for intelligently selecting subjects and other things. Same thing, scrolling performance in Illustrator went up 390%. I mean, these numbers are just absolutely insane. If you take a look at other software, I'm gonna keep this relatively short here, but scene edit detection in Premiere Pro in 4K up to 430% speed increase, which again is just absolutely insane. And so this means that there is a very clear added value here if you do want to use the Creative Cloud applications on the Apple M1 chip. So there's a significant speed increase. Of course, there's a lot of work that went into this from the Adobe side as well, making sure that everything runs smoothly out of the box. If you do buy fresh new hardware and you want to get your hands dirty on the Adobe Creative Cloud software. Now, let's talk about mobility just very, very shortly here. Know that Adobe has a variety of mobile applications out there. I'm guessing there's probably about 10 of them or so. Some of them are very, very small. Others are very significant to your daily workflow and work processes. Lightroom Mobile is one of them. So just know that you have the complete Lightroom module available on the iPad, on your iPhone, in a web browser, and on the desktop. So 4 different platforms. And you can basically start with a picture on one device, stop whatever it is you're doing, and then pick up that project on your other device, because everything is synced to the cloud, which is actually very, very neat. I'm going to show that in just a couple of minutes here. Now, I use Lightroom Mobile on my phone a lot. Now, I don't consider myself a photographer. I think I have a pretty good eye for certain things. My background is in graphic design after all. But the thing is that I really enjoy this because of the simplicity of what you can do with it and the power of what it can actually do to your images. It's one thing manipulating your images, for example, cutting someone out of a picture, replacing the background, whatever. There's a difference between like actually changing the reality of what was captured in the picture versus bringing out what was already captured in the original image, but it was just hidden in the noise of the image. Again, I'm going to show you a couple of really cool examples in just a couple of minutes here. Also, introducing Photoshop for the iPad. If you haven't played around with this yet, and if you have a Photoshop license, I would suggest you give this a go. It is cool. It is really fun to play around with. I have to say, I caught myself spending way too much time on Photoshop for the iPad. So apparently the hardest part of learning Photoshop for the iPad is learning when to stop. So again, give this a go. I have a significant demo for you guys in just a couple of minutes. And of course, if you are more into drawing and painting, I would suggest you take a look at Adobe Illustrator for the iPad, which only came out about a year ago. And of course, Adobe Fresco, which has just now been announced for the iPhone as well, which is our digital drawing and painting app. So this is real life drawing with oil paints, drawing with watercolors. Everything flows into each other. All the colors flow into one another, blending and mixing, all AI driven. It's really, really cool. So I would really suggest you give this a go once you get your iPad Pro out. And that's it. That's a short introduction I want to show you guys. So let's quickly just go ahead and then dive into the actual hands-on bit. So I do have my iPad here, so you should be able to see this now. This is my iPad Pro. I'm going to start out here with Lightroom. Now, I'm just going to show you how quickly and how easily you can use something like Lightroom. I am using my iPad Pro here for now, but of course I could have done this exact same webinar on my iPhone, but of course I have more screen estate if I'm using this device instead. So in a nutshell, what you have an online catalog of images in which you can import images from various sources. Of course, what you can do is you can just go ahead and just import the pictures that you have. Or what you can also do, of course, since this is an iPad Pro, is you can always go ahead and connect, for example, a smart card reader and then just take in those pictures directly from that smart card reader, or directly connect your professional camera to your device, which is, again, very unique. I cannot do this with my regular iPhone. Now, obviously, there is a camera option here as well. And I gotta admit, I actually sometimes, actually most of the time, prefer to use my Lightroom camera option over the one that comes with the regular iPhone or iPad, for example, because I have a little bit more control. So, for example, if I were to go ahead and just kind of take the camera option for now, if I could kind of move the iPad, so actually have like one person here. So, what cool thing is, if you take a look at the camera settings on the bottom left here, like we're used to kind of shooting automatic, it's just point and click, right? So there's no added value here whatsoever. But if I were to kind of come in here and then choose the professional option, I do have a lot more control over, for example, the white balance, specifically the ISO values, the shutter speed, and the exposure of the current shot that I would like to take. So the thing is, the software just allows me to use the full potential of the camera lens that comes with the hardware that I'm currently using. And of course, you can also use HDR images, which will basically mix a darker and lighter version of this picture together to give you like these amazing looking effects. I'll show you a couple of examples in just a minute here. I'm just going to go ahead and kind of close the camera for now. Let's go back to my pictures. Now, in my line of work, I travel a lot, not so much these last year, of course, but I do travel quite a bit. So I take a lot of pictures using Lightroom, and I do go ahead and I just start to edit those pictures. This is not a very exotic image, to be honest. This is just taken a couple of blocks from where I live, but this is the finished version that I have in Lightroom. Now, if I press and hold down on the image, this was the original image. Now, I did see like being there, like this was a pretty good shot, but if I really take a look at what Lightroom made from that, it just looks a lot better. Now, you might be thinking, well, this is all Photoshopped. You clearly replaced the sky. Well, I didn't. I just pressed a button, and then Lightroom brought out the sky a lot better. So this information was already captured by the camera that is on my iPhone. Lightroom just brought out the data. I did not replace the sky. I emphasized the sky. It was already there. And so basically, this is the kind of stuff that you can do with the Lightroom application. So for example, if I take a look at a few other images here. So if I were to take a look and just, let's say I would take this here. So I was visiting a space center a couple of years ago, and this is just a basic picture I took. This is unedited. Now, usually if you have dark parts in the image, you can always kind of clear this up by working on with these light settings, etc. But the quickest way to do this is just by hitting that auto button at the top right of the screen. I'm just gonna go ahead and just choose auto for now. And you immediately notice, like before and after, that it does really make a huge difference if you take a look at that picture. It just brings out a lot more detail. So again, this is all AI driven, and it's going to make sure that I do optimize my images as best as I can. This might actually need a little bit more clarity like this. And now if I press and hold, I'm going from this fuzzy image to this one, which is actually a lot more compelling. Now, working on these images is actually very easy, and that auto button is really going to save your life. Again, this is something I took, I'm guessing, about a year ago or so. Again, regular sky, it looks great. Now look what happens if I press the auto option. It gives me this. It just brings out a sky I didn't even know was there. And now it's just up to me to go ahead and now add all sorts of other edits. Something like this, for example, emphasize the colors. It does darken the darks a little bit more, so I'm going to go ahead and just kind of emphasize this a bit better. I'm going to go ahead and kind of use this slider, and I can just go ahead and reduce anything I want. If you think this was a little bit overboard, that's absolutely fine. Again, the hardest part here is knowing when to stop. Now, if you take a look at other images, again, this is just a picture I took with my phone. I absolutely love the lighting in this picture. Of course, I was in a restaurant. So what do you do if you're on a restaurant? You just go ahead and take pictures. So really good wine, by the way. Oh, wow. So basically what you have here is you have two pictures taken in the exact same lighting environment. So this means if I, for example, take a look at this picture here, and I would just press the auto option, I could go ahead and still play around with some of these lighting options. I can play with the blacks. For example, I'm going to reduce the blacks a little bit like this. I might actually change the exposure a bit and maybe lower the highlights a bit like so. And I'm not even going to touch anything else. I kind of like these settings, so like the combination of these different sliders here. And so what I can do is I can always go ahead and I'll press the options at the top right and then choose to copy the settings that I have just set. I'm going to go ahead and copy these settings. I'm going to go back to my overview. I'm going to choose that second image, which I know was taken in the exact same lighting environment. I'm going to go ahead and press that same option at the top right, and I'm going to choose paste. And basically, I just reapply those exact same settings going from before to after to help optimize these images. I mean, that's exactly what Lightroom does. It optimizes the images that you already have. Now let's take it one step further. Let's take a look at this one here. This is, again, a quick picture I took. Again, this was in, I think it was Los Angeles. This is actually the old warehouse where they recorded some of the scenes of the classic Blade Runner movie. This is where the puppet master was basically hiding in this building. Anyway, enough about that. So let's take a look at this image here. So same thing, I can go ahead and just press auto, which is going to bring out a lot more detail of this beautiful building, but there's a lot more that I need to do. I don't think that the image is 100% straight, so you can always go ahead and take a look here at the geometry, and you can always go ahead and play around with these geometry options here. If I choose auto, it is going to basically, see, fix that perspective for me, because if you take a look at, let's say, this balcony that you have here, so this is what I had before. It was not 100% horizontal, but now if I let go, this is now perfectly horizontal. See, same thing here for the edge here. This is all beautifully horizontal and vertical. So it really went ahead and fixed that perspective for me. So now, for example, I could go ahead, maybe lower the exposure a little bit like this, which is kind of neat. And I like the fact that the light is coming from this dome here at the top of this image. So what I can do is maybe go ahead and press another option, and I'm going to add a local adjustment. For example, I'm going to add a adjustment here. There you go. And so the red is going to make sure that it shows me where or how this image is going to be manipulated. And I'm going to go ahead and now just increase the exposure a little bit just to kind of have more light come through here. And I'm going to just hit the done button, and I'm going to lower the overall exposure a little bit more so it contrasts more with that dome basically emitting that light. I might actually kind of increase this a little bit more, maybe make it a little more like this, kind of shine down. And if I want, I can even go ahead and change the color of the light that actually comes into the picture. So it should not be red. It might be a little bit more reddish or orangey. For example, might desaturate this a little bit here, and I'm going to choose done. And now same thing, I went from this image to this image in a very relative short time. Now, if you want to kind of jazz it up a little bit more, of course, we are a lot of you might be part of the Instagram club. So basically what you can do is you can always just go ahead and just press, there you go, press this option here, which basically allows you to apply a set of, well, I'm not going to call it filters because like we're used to talking about filters as in something that's kind of overlays the image and that's it. Every single thing that you apply here from this premium library is just a collection of settings that you can go ahead and manipulate. If you might say, well, I do this with Instagram, so I don't give a damn about this. Well, that's not the same thing. Instagram basically just kind of applies the effect and that's it. You have no control over this. Here, you have control over everything. For example, you've got 3 different settings here. One for deep skin, medium skin, light skin, which basically is the best settings that you can apply based on the skin tone of the individual in the picture, going from Caucasian to a black person. We've got cinematic styles, for example, which you can apply like this, which again gives us a very, very, very cool effect. And we can take a look at more futuristic, vintage. I'm not going to read everything off the screen here, but you kind of know what I'm getting at here. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of apply this. Now, the cool thing about this is that you can basically take a look at the settings that were applied in order to achieve that effect. So if you take a look at some of these options here, you can see that they actually played around with the shadows, they played around with the midtones and the highlights to dynamically recolor this image, which means that everything you do is what we call non-destructive. You can just go ahead and play around with those settings anytime you want. On top of that, everything that you do within Lightroom is always non-destructive, which means that you can always go back to the original. Nothing is ever going to permanently change the image that you have. You can reorder all the images that you have into different catalogs, different folders and albums. And also know that if you have an album that you would like to share with someone else, either just for showing off your pictures or to collaborate with those individuals online, you can go ahead and press the share option at the top right of your screen, which will allow you to basically share and invite people into your album, either by having an open link or by inviting named individuals into your album. And by the way, if you take a look at this URL that you see here, if you were to go to this URL in a web browser right now, you would actually see the images that I have just worked on. Everything is live, it's stored in the cloud, it works beautifully. And so based on that, you can actually share galleries with friends and maybe your customers so they can pick and choose the images that they like best from your photo shoot. Now, also know, if you want to get started with Lightroom, that there is a community behind Lightroom. So this means that every single image that you edit on Lightroom, you can basically press a button, you can share it with the community. So this means that anyone that uses Lightroom can basically show off how they retouch that image. So for example, if I take a look at this one here, it's going to show the image. It's going to show me exactly what this person did. I'm going to go ahead and click Start Tutorial. This is the original image. And now the person itself is going to run me through what it was he manipulated in order to get to that final image. So you can learn from everyone in the community. It says open the crop panel. Okay, I'm going to just press and open up the crop panel. Rotate the image to give a strong vertical lines. Okay, I'm going to just go ahead and rotate this just a little bit here. And it's basically going to guide you through this process here. I'm not going to go ahead and finish everything. I'm going to hit the cancel button for now. Cancel. Done. Yes, it really wants me to listen to it. Yes, yes, done. Anyway, so I'm going to close it here. skip the feedback, done. So this is basically how you start with Lightroom. So I would suggest give it a go, download this on your iPhone or on your iPad. Know that you can use about 85% of the app for free. You don't need to have a paid membership. Of course, if you do have a paid membership, you of course have access to the premium features, which are the features that you can see here on this screen. Again, more information available via adobe.com. Now, let's quickly take a look at Photoshop for the iPad now. Let's quickly take a look here. It seems to have disconnected me for a second. I'm just going to go ahead and kind of close the app. Maybe this is my connection acting up. I'm not really sure. Oh, well, the joys of doing live demos. So basically what we're going to be doing here is going to just quickly create our own composition directly in Photoshop. Looks like Photoshop is not cooperating with me. I'm just going to go ahead and kind of close this again for a second here. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to take these images here, the images I have here, and I'm going to try and combine these into a composition. Now, I have to say, I can, again, make this as complex as I want. I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes on this, let's say 10, maybe 15. I mean, I'm going to make sure I hurry. I have a finished version of this already that's good to go here on my desktop as well, but I do want to kind of give you guys the chance to see how this actually works. I'm going to try this again. I'm not sure why this is acting up all of a sudden. The art of live demos. Let's just quickly close another thing. Let's go ahead and take a look. If I do have, I definitely should have the latest version. Let's check this out here for a second. There we go. Yes, this seems to be the last version. Interesting. Anyway, let's give it a minute here. Let's see if I can revisit that in just a couple of minutes. Maybe it just wakes up. It's still loading something in the background. I'm not really sure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly just move away from my iPad for a second. I'm going to move to the next subject, and we might revisit Photoshop for the iPad in just a minute here. So I'm going to quickly just kind of switch my keyboard with my iPad. So I'm quickly just going to go ahead here and jump into Photoshop. Now, what's interesting here in Photoshop is that if you start the application, if you take a look here at the Your Work category, there's actually a Lightroom Photos option. And so this means that I can actually access my Lightroom photos directly from Photoshop. So if I take a look at the demo folder I have here. I'm sorry, did someone say anything? Okay, if you didn't mean to speak up, maybe it's best to mute your line, please. Christoph, can you mute the lines?
I think Jesse wants to say something, maybe about a question in the chat room. So they don't need Lightroom to see the picture when shared, he said. But it was
no. Okay, I get the question. Yes, no. If you share an album, an Lightroom album with others, you do not need to have, the recipient does not need to have Lightroom installed themselves. They can just view the album in a web browser. That's the only thing they need. So that's a good point. Thank you for that. So I'm going to just go ahead and just take a look here at the albums I have. So if I take a look, for example, here in my demo files, you can see that I have all my Lightroom pictures here. If I take a look at the retouch category, recognize these pictures here. This is the one that I just did here in Lightroom just a couple of minutes ago. So I'm just going to go ahead and close this for now. Now I'm taking a look at some AI-driven features. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to take a look at some of the files I have here. So let's take a look at some of the AI-driven features. So there are a couple things that were added to Photoshop recently. They're called neural filters. So this is something that was created by working together with the guys from NVIDIA who built the graphic cards and stuff. And so what it basically does is it allows us to work on images in a very intelligent way. So normally, if you're working on images, you have an idea of what you want to change in the image, and then you're the one actually executing all those things yourself. Now, the thing is, of course, Adobe does know what it is that you're trying to achieve mostly with your images. Of course, we talk to designers for that kind of stuff. And so we do know that a lot of people have issues with selections. They might have issues replacing a sky or all that kind of stuff. And so we basically try to automate a lot of these different things here. So for example, if I were to just go back to my Lightroom pictures, let's say I'm gonna use This one, remember this picture here, I just pressed the auto option. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of choose import selected for now. It's going to import that picture for me, and it is going to open this up here in Photoshop. It's going to take a second. There you go. Get started. I'm going to choose open here. This was one image. I was actually looking for the other one. You know what, that's absolutely fine. I'm just going to go ahead and just kind of pick this image from here myself. So this is the basic picture, right? This is the one that I had before within Lightroom. So I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I am going to choose edit. I'm going to choose sky replacement. So basically what it does is it's going to take my original picture and it's going to use AI to detect where the sky is in the picture. And it's going to replace that sky with any other sky that you want. Now, of course, Photoshop does ship with a bunch of basic default skies. And so I can just go ahead and choose the sky that I want. Now, of course, this is clearly an evening picture that I do not want to have this way. But I can just kind of go ahead and fake my way through this here. Of course, this does not make any sense. So I'm going to quickly scroll down and choose something that's a little bit more dramatic. I think this one might do the trick. There you go. See, so the lighting is similar. I know the reflection doesn't match 100%, but you know it does kind of work its way through this here. I can always go ahead and change this as well. Of course, it is Photoshop after all. And you can go ahead and kind of change the color temperature of this sky. And the cool thing is that if you click OK, it's going to give you a bunch of layers. It's going to give you all the different building blocks that it needed to actually achieve that effect. And if you take a look here, it actually did a very, very good job cutting out these little shrubs and bushes and trees, etc., for you to actually have a realistic version of this sky. Again, it's all AI driven, and this works really, really fast. I got to say, normally you have to wait a bit longer for this to actually work. Now, just another example here. I do used to travel to Amsterdam a lot, and so this is taken at the Amsterdam Central Station. So again, a bit more of a complex image. So again, lots of stuff happening. I've got some trees. I've got, I think this was a crane. I've got, of course, this construction here from the actual train station. I've got this ferry. I've got a lot of stuff happening here. So same thing. I can just quickly go ahead and I'm going to choose edit. I'm going to go ahead, go down and choose sky replacement. And same thing, like it's going to now apply the last one I have, which is very, very dramatic sky. I can basically choose what it is I would like to apply. And the beauty of this is that it actually really did its best to, let's go ahead and just choose OK for now, to, there we go, mask everything in this picture. As you can see, this is the mask that it applied in order to have a good way of filtering the sky through. And I mean, you got to admit, the result is actually spectacular. Just a couple of seconds, it automatically detects the sky, does a replacement for me, and on top of that, I can actually go ahead and move the sky in the scene and even play around with the color temperature. Let's say I make it a bit more blue, and even have an effect on the foreground of this image as well to actually make some of the colors seep through a lot more, something that you do benefit more from if it's more like a dramatic evening sky. And this is actually really, really cool. Now, of course, yes, you can even import your own sky images if you have a couple. So this is completely up to you. But just know that you have the algorithm available for you to actually do this kind of stuff yourself. Again, very cool, very easy, very little learning curve. And I got to say, I really like what has become of this image. Let's go ahead and just not save this for now. There's a couple of things that you can do with this as well. So another thing that's actually quite interesting is, let's go take this image for now, and I'm going to open this up in Photoshop. And I'm going to go ahead and choose a filter. And I'm going to choose the brand new neural filters. And so again, the neural filters is just a list of AI-driven filters that I can now use to basically do the impossible. It's that simple. So for now, this is a black and white image. This is the US. I'm guessing somewhere in the 60s or something. I'm not really sure. I just found this on Google. I'll be honest with you guys. And the thing is, let's say I have to recolor the image. I used to do black and white recoloring, like when I was still working as a designer. It takes a lot of work, I got to tell you. But now we can actually automate this. So what I can do is I can go ahead and I can take a look here at the colorize option. And I'm just going to, oh, apparently I have to download the plugin first. And what it's going to do is going to analyze the picture, and it's going to colorize the picture for me automatically. Now, these are individuals of color, and it even detected the skin color of these individuals, which I have to say is very spectacular. So it actually came in and it recolored everything for me. And I actually have, I actually have control over this as well. So I can even kind of click here on her blouse and say, you know what, maybe this should be like a more greenish tint. I'm just going to go ahead and choose OK. And it's going to do this and it's going to apply that greenish color here as well. So it does allow me to kind of play around with this kind of stuff. Let's try this again. Let's try with, I have a black and white landscape that I found as well. There you go. So again, these are just original black and white images. I did not download a color image and convert it to black and white. So there's traces of it. There's no trace of this whatsoever. Same thing. I'm going to go ahead and choose neural filters. And I'm going to click here and I'm going to choose the colorize option again. Click colorize. It detects the fact this is a landscape. It gives me a really good starting point to actually fine tune this in Photoshop afterwards. So again, very intelligent, and it really, really helps me to speed things up. Now, let's take a look here at this person. This is a project I was working on, I'm guessing about a year ago. This was for a couple of education customers I had. So I got a picture, just a girl, you know, she's smiling a little bit, but apparently she's not that happy going to school. So what I can do is I can go ahead and choose filter, and I can choose neural filters. And so with this, there's actually a smart portrait option I can use now. If I click smart portrait, I can choose how happy she is. So for example, I have a happiness slider, I have a surprise, anger, and age slider. I can go ahead and maybe just kind of click the happiness slider. I'm going to increase that value quite a bit here. And it's going to send this image into the cloud in order to have the algorithm do its work. So that's why you have this little charging thing here. It's currently processing the image. And once the processing is done, it does take a couple of seconds because it's part of the, not the M1 chip here, but it's part of the processing speed in the cloud, basically. And it's basically going to bring this back. And look, she has teeth. I didn't even know she had teeth. So this means that I actually have a very realistic way of artificially changing what somebody might look like. I'm going to choose OK. I mean, you got to say, this is a random picture, okay? I just took this from Adobe stock. Like, if you did before and after, this is really, really good, okay? Now, I have another example. I already kind of went ahead and did a couple of these before. And so I got a couple here. So this is, again, just a regular picture that I have. And I actually saved a couple of these presets already. So I was able to change the direction of the light. As you can see, there's a shadow here on this sign for face. So I was able to intelligently change the lighting conditions in the picture, which is very time consuming in Photoshop, I gotta tell you. I was able to change her age as well. This is the older version of her, and it does really change the size of the ears. The ears are a bit larger, as what happens with older people. The hair is thinner, the color has changed. I even have a younger version of her as well. And you might be thinking, why would I ever need to have an older version of someone apart from running a joke, you know, on someone? Well, you have to realize not just the advertising world, but also a lot of governments are using Photoshop day to day to track individuals. This is not just about security and terrorism, but it's also about maybe you lost a child, maybe someone ran off and someone's been missing person report for a couple of years. So right now, this was done by digital painting, digital sketching, but now if you put AI into the play, you can actually very easily have an image of what someone might look like after X amount of years. And we actually do have some numbers of this sometimes. So we do have some governments sharing with us how many lost individuals they were actually able to find thanks to Photoshop. So it's something that not a lot of people think about, but it is used for these purposes as well. So this is why you might be using these things as well. I have a sad picture, and of course, I have a very happy picture as well. So, excuse me. So the thing is, again, neural filters, check them out. They're very accessible. They're very easy to use. And again, especially for smart portrait, you can have happiness, surprise, anger, all sorts of sliders. I was hoping they would put in a I am not upset with you, but I'm just disappointed slider. That I think would have been a great addition. But still, maybe next version. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of close this for now. And let's take a look at the next project. Now, I'm going to go back to my iPad because apparently he just needed a bit of a rest. But Photoshop's back, guys. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at Photoshop for iPad. Apparently, it was just loading in my cloud documents. I was too fast, so that tends to happen here if I'm using the software. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of tap one project that I have here, and it's going to open up the project that I have. Again, it's loading a bit slowly. Maybe it's my Wi-Fi connection here in my study. I'm not really sure, but it's basically going to start out here with this file. And so what I did is I basically created a brand new document, and I just brought in a couple of images. So again, I've got this image, I've got this image, this image, this image, this image here. I actually am not going to use the birds for now. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of delete the birds layer for now. And I'm just going to go ahead and build a very, very quick composition of this. Now, I cannot finish every single detail. I do not have the time for that, unfortunately. I'm going to start out just with the basics for now. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of change the order of some of these images. This one should go at the bottom. That's something I do remember, followed by this one here, and then I need the woman that is in the water as well. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of scale this up for now. I'm going to press an option. I'm going to quickly scale this up a little bit like so. I'll choose done. And I actually don't want this individual to be in the picture. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll choose my retouching options. I'm going to set the hardness. I'm going to lower the hardness to 50%. I'm going to change the size of my brush as well. And I'm just going to go ahead and just kind of paint away, something like this. Yeah, I'm going to just use my Apple Pencil, just kind of paint away like where this person is swimming right now. And I just need this person to be gone. There you go. Those. I'm going to wait for a second. Photoshop's going to do the processing. And there we go. We just got rid of this person. So this is fine for now. I just have this as a background, and I'm going to do something similar here with the image I have of this woman. So I'm going to go ahead and just move this to the top. This should be on the surface. This should be here at the bottom. I just need this to be a background. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of scale this up for now. There we go. A bit lower. I'll just choose done. And I'm just going to go ahead and take the image of this woman here. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to just select the woman and the reflection that we have on the surface of this image. Now, again, this is a lot of selection work here. Luckily, I have my AI. So what I'm going to go ahead is I'm going to go in here to my selection options, and I'm going to choose select subject. And it's going to, you guess what? It's going to select the subject in the picture. It's going to try and decide what is happening in this picture. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of choose the mask option to kind of mask that out here and kind of put here on the surface of this image for now. Now, I know it looks a bit fabricated, but it's going to look a lot better. So don't worry about that. And with that, we can now just go ahead and just continue going. So what I can do now is I can maybe take a look and kind of put the bubbles on top of her, and I'm going to change the options. And I'm going to change this here to a different blending mode. I'm going to choose screen for now, and I might actually lower the opacity just a little bit here. And I'm going to put this maybe just a bit higher, like so. Now, again, we're going to make this like a very surreal scene. So I do want to combine this with mountains and skies. It's Photoshop. Okay, anything's possible. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of work on this first here. So I'm going to first go ahead and make sure I am getting rid of the sky I have here in this basic picture. Zoom out a little bit here. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of choose my selection tool again. I'm going to choose the quick selection tool for now. I'm going to go ahead and kind of draw over the area I would like to select for a second. I'm going to be very quick about this because otherwise I'm going to be a little bit shy for time here. Like this, and I'm going to press the mask icon, which is going to just mask away the mountains that I have. Again, very, very easy. And now I'm going to do the exact same thing with these clouds here. Now with these clouds, of course, clouds are fluffy, so I need to kind of start with a basic selection for now. Let's quickly try this again. This is a bit too much. So I'm going to start with a basic selection. Actually, I'm going to press and hold down the option key and just kind of remove these areas instead. Again, it's kind of up to you how you want to work. If you want to select the actual clouds or select the sky and then invert your selection. Again, I'm going to add a little bit more, a little bit more. There you go. And I'm just going to go ahead and click the refine edge option at the bottom of the screen, and it will allow me to now automatically detect the edges of these clouds. And I'm actually going to show you this on a black background just as a preview. This is basically what it's doing right now. So I have a pretty good fluffy cloud now. I'm going to press done, and again I'm going to press the, there you go, I'm going to press the mask icon. Now, if I combine both images, then you get something like this here, which is starting to look pretty good, I gotta say. So I'm going to just quickly go ahead and just kind of scale this up a little bit more. So it is a little bit larger. It comes up across a bit higher. And I'm going to quickly move the cloud here like so. And I'm going to go into the mask for now. And I'm just going to take a very soft brush, like a very, very soft brush that is about this size, more or less, something like this. And opacity, I'm going to lower the opacity about 50% of that brush. I'm going to quickly zoom in, and I'm going to brush away parts of the mountain here to make it semi-transparent, and that means that the clouds that are sitting behind it are going to kind of seep through, and it's going to give me this mist effect. Look, I'm going to, of course, you have to work on the proper layer. I'm going to start to kind of brush this away, maybe a bit bigger, a bit lower in opacity, a bit larger. I'm just going to kind of add like a little haze here to these clouds. And I go ahead and make that a bit smaller and kind of work on very specific areas. Let's say, for example, that this area here should be a lot more foggy. And same thing here, again, a lot more foggy, depending on the depth of these clouds. And again, I can work on this a lot more, but I don't have that much time, unfortunately, for you guys. So I'm just going to go ahead and kind of add like a little bit here, because I do think these edges should be a bit more shrouded in the actual clouds. And again, you can kind of keep working and keep adding as much detail as you basically want. And this is basically the basics of what I wanted to achieve. So the only thing left for me to do now is start to add a lot of different things here. So I can always go ahead and I can maybe move this one to the top. I can change the blending mode to, let's say, multiply or color dodge. I can basically play around with some of these options here now. Actually, I might actually put this back for where it came from. To basically add a lot more detail and a lot more depth. So for example, what I can do is I can say that I can create a new layer, and I'm going to choose white. Actually, it should not be white. I'm going to choose like a very, very light blue instead. And I'm going to choose a different brush. So as you can see, I have a lot of different brushes here that I can play around with here. So I've got watercolors, I've got spatters. Oh, spatter texture. I kind of like spatter and texture. What I can do is I can kind of go ahead, it's kind of brush in, oh, maybe a bit smaller, kind of brush in like a bit of, oops. Let's quickly change the flow. Let's lower the flow a little bit and increase the size. And let's change the blending mode to, let's choose overlay. I can go ahead and start to kind of add like little bubbles, as you can see, like more bubbles. Maybe change this to a bit of a brighter color. And they're small. I might actually choose screen for a second to kind of show that a bit more clearly to you guys. So there you go. This is where they are. These are the bubbles. And you can kind of go ahead and kind of blur this as well if you want. So for example, I can just go ahead and I'm just going to merge this for a second. I'm going to choose merge visible. And I'm going to duplicate the layer just to kind of show you what you can do with this kind of stuff. And then I'm going to just maybe add a blur effect, just kind of finish this off for a second. I might blur this image a bit like this. I'll choose done, and I'm going to choose a different blending mode. Let's say, for example, I'm going to choose screen, or I can choose overlay just to kind of give me like a different effect. And this is kind of how you start to build these different types of projects. Now, what's interesting here is that if you kind of go back here to the main screen, it's going to save this file here as a cloud document. Now, for example, here I did spend a little bit more work on the one I have here. It's trying to open up an iPad, but you know what? I'm just going to hide the iPad for now. I'm just going to show you guys what you can do here in Photoshop. So here, for example, in Photoshop, you can basically click the cloud document option, and it is going to show you all the files you were just working on. So again, everything is connected to one and the same source of truth, basically. So if I could take a look here and take a look at the actual composition, then you will see that if I take a look here, I'm going to open this up in, well, it's choosing preview for now, but I'm just going to close this, and I'm going to open this up in Photoshop. So I worked a bit longer on this, and so this is the final result of that image that I was working on the iPad. I had some birds. I changed the color balance a little bit, so the colors are a bit different here. I added some depth perspective. I added some grain to this, all sorts of different filters here. But basically, what I have here is I have an image that I'm actually quite happy with. And now it's just a matter of stopping myself from adding whatever, all sorts of other fantastical elements, maybe hot air balloons and whatever, or maybe some more detail in the water, maybe some fish or all kinds of stuff. And this is basically how you do it. You just start out with Photoshop on the iPad, a couple of good images, and then you basically go nuts on these devices. Now, just to finish off here, I've got one last thing to show you guys before I'm going to see if we have any questions and before we round things off, and that is Premiere Pro. So there's one specific feature that I would do want to show you guys here. It's not going to take that long, but it's something that I have to say is going to really speed up your work, and it's something where the M1 chip also really excels at, and that is processing video. So I'm going to take a look at this particular project. It is launching Premiere Pro here in the background for me. And what it basically does is it is basically giving me a way of analyzing audio, so speech, in Premiere Pro. And Premiere Pro is going to give me a transcript of that audio. So it's going to type out everything that it hears. And so based on that transcript, it can auto-generate subtitles or captions for me, which is really, really cool. And so the thing is that if I were to just go ahead, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of delete everything I have here for now. So if I were to take a look at the captions I have, I'm going to just give me a second here. Oops. Just give me a sec. It seems to have already created the captions for me. I'm going to delete the track. There you go. So basically, this is the original video. One thing is a bit difficult for me now because this is a Teams meeting, is if the audio is going to transfer through. I'm not really sure. I don't think you can hear the audio right now. So I'm going to quickly try and play this here with the actual video. I'm not sure if you can hear the audio right now.
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
That's fine. It's a sharing thing with Teams. Like, anyway, so he's just saying, "Hey guys, my name is Brian. I'm going to talk to you about the brand new NVIDIA app." Well, anyway, he talks really, really fast, I got to say. And so the thing is that if you take a look at the audio here, so there's clearly a lot of audio, and I just need a proper way of transcribing what it is he's saying. And so again, this is something. Just give me 1 second. Maybe if I go back to Teams for a second here. Maybe there's an extra option. I can try and just kind of reshare my screen here for a second. And I am going to choose here. Let me quickly just reshare my screen for a second. I do apologize. And see if there is a include computer sound option. There we go. It is as well. And I'm going to share my screen. And let's give this one more go. Now let's see if you can hear the audio now.
No, I still don't hear it.
I'm sorry, it's a Teams thing. I do apologize. So anyway, so the thing is, what you do is you just take the video that you have and you just click the transcribe sequence option. And you then basically select a couple things. For example, I should analyze the audio on track. I have to specify the language that is currently being used. Now, I do realize I am talking to a Dutch-speaking audience, so Dutch is not part of the languages that are supported right now. It is on the roadmap. It is coming. I cannot commit to a very specific date, but know that an additional list of languages is definitely on its way. But know that we have these languages here to get started with. So this is a American English here. This is all fine. I'm going to choose transcribe. It's going to basically render the audio, and see how fast this slider was basically moving and closing. That first closing slider, if I do this on this computer here, I have to wait probably around 2 minutes for it to close completely, to load 100%, to analyze the audio. Here it just does like bang, and it's just done. Now it is transcribing the sequence. So again, this is something that happens in the cloud. It transcribes it. It just throws it back to me, and I'm going to end up with basically a time-coded transcription of this conversation. So the thing that he is actually presenting. Now I have to say, I picked a technical video that came from the YouTube page of NVIDIA. So it's a technical conversation. So he talks about broadcasting and using NVIDIA and using all the kind of stuff. And to my surprise, even things like when he talks about AI, even those things are actually properly capitalized and properly formatted in those subtitles. Now I'm going to let it load for just a couple of more seconds here. In the meantime, I'm going to show you the final result. Oh, actually, it's done. Okay, it was actually a bit too fast here. So basically, this is what it says. It says, hey everyone, I'm Brandon. I'm very excited today to talk to you about our video broadcasting app. Like many of you, I've been home a lot lately. So look at this. This is actually very, very cool. He talks about he has a very basic webcam microphone setup. These are not your everyday English sentences, okay? And so it actually took care of a lot of this. See, it says it brings it out using the power of AI. You know, look at how this is actually transcribed. This is excellent. And so with that, the only thing that I need to do is click the Create Captions option. This is a basic caption track. I can choose how many words I want to have in one line and blah, blah, blah. I can just choose the Create option, and it's going to add those captions directly to the video. And there we go. If I click the play button, you're going to see exactly that. Okay, and so this is actually really interesting because if you have video, let's say you've got your next video of your CEO that talks about, you know, where your company's going in the next quarter, where the business are going on the industry, and you have an interview of him and he's speaking English or French or whatever of the language that we have supported here, you just click the transcribe option. It will transcribe everything for you, and you have your subtitled video ready to push on LinkedIn. I actually used this myself last week. I'm currently organizing a series of webinars that were scaling up at Adobe in 8 different languages. And I had one short introduction video, which was in English, and I needed to have a localized version of that same video and transcribe it once. It gives you the list of all the text that you need. There's an export option. You can export that text to Excel. Shared it as a cloud document with my coworkers. They added their languages, re-import the languages, and I had my localizations in 8 different languages. So it really, really boosts your production. Now, anyway, we are on time here. It is on the hour. I'm going to basically stop sharing my screen for a second here and see if we have any questions, because we've actually come to the end of the presentation. So I'll quickly take a look here at the chat, which I could not see before. There you go. So yes, so Jesse, you asked that question when you're sharing. Nope, no Lightroom is required. That's basically it. Are there any questions? Anyone that needs to ask a question about what I've been doing here, Photoshop on the iPad, Lightroom, anything I've been presenting? It is quiet, which means this was actually very good or very bad.
No, it was very good.
I'm not sure who's talking right now, but you seem to have a microphone. Am I the only one that hears the distorted microphone?
Yes, sir. It's a little bit distorted.
Yeah, we cannot understand you. Yes, I'm sorry. So
could you type the message, please?
Yeah, please put it in the chat if you can. In the meantime, if anyone else wants to speak up, please go ahead. Okay, yes, thanks for confirming. Thanks, Dimitri. Anyone else who has any questions? If not, I would say we call it a day. So stop working. No, we just call it a day. We're going to end up here. Thank you so much for joining. Christophe, I'm not sure if you want to add anything to finish off.
No, I just want to thank you for the really amazing presentation, Bart. So you made me smile without using Adobe Photoshop. So this concludes the webinar. So all of the guests, thank you all for attending. I hope you've learned and enjoyed it as much as I do. So so thank you again, Bart, for this amazing presentation. So
you're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks, guys. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Ciao, everybody.